Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. All about nutrition from your favorite dietitian. Everything you need to digest in your mind. Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. Making you healthier one bite at a time. With Tony. Woo.
Hello and welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast. I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. I'm so excited for you guys to listen to our very next interview. I have my guest, Chris Harris. He is the founder of Startup U. He has a podcast. He has Startup U TV. Basically, if you've ever considered or thought about becoming an entrepreneur, this is for you. However, even if you're not thinking of being an entrepreneur and you're just thinking about how do I heal my habits? How do I form healthier habits? How do I stick to something and follow through with it when I'm saying I'm going to do something? Still stay on, because at the core, what makes people successful are their habits. So whether you choose to do it in your entrepreneurial journey or your regular career or just whatever you're doing, maybe as a mom or a parent, you're still going to find this beneficial. So definitely stay tuned. So without further ado, I want to welcome Chris Harris to the podcast. Hi, Chris.
Hey, Tony. Excited to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you. So the very first question I asked my guests is a 3-part question. And I want you to introduce yourself to the listeners by sharing who you are, what you do, and most importantly, why you do what you do.
Who I am. It's so hard because we've become so conditioned in the Western world to just be like my name and what I do, right? Like we just skip over everything else. Mm-hmm. So who I am, I think is somebody that kind of is more of a contrarian, kind of see things a little bit differently through a different lens. Definitely always dance to the beat of a different drummer. Is that how the saying goes? Mm-hmm. And very much a rebel, super rebellious, and always kind of like looking at things like, well, why did they do it that way? Why did they do it this way? So I preface all that by saying, I know you talked about how people might be interested in looking at their own business and stuff like that. So I'm a big believer that entrepreneurs are born, they're not bred. Actually, I just had a talk with Gino Wickman. For those that don't know who Gino Wickman is, this guy's like one of the experts, like a Steve Wozniak of Startup U, or Startup U, not Startup U, of startups in general. Startup U is my brand, of startups in general. This dude is like a savant when it comes to startups. So anyways, we had a talk yesterday, and it was crazy how we had like the same orthodoxy, like how entrepreneurs were born and not bred, and like all these characteristics and traits that they have and stuff like that. It was just really profound and interesting. So I think I always knew that I was outside the 9 to 5, just kind of thought differently, looked at it differently, always saw the limitations with being in a 9 to 5. Not that that's bad. People that love 9 to 5 are why people like me get to do what we do, because without them, we'd all be crazy people if we were all entrepreneurs, right? Mm-hmm. So jump into my first few businesses. I'm doing side hustles and stuff like that growing up, going back to elementary school. I was actually mowing neighbors' lawns when all my friends were hanging out at the pool doing their thing. I'm making money, doing side hustles and stuff, and that's very trendy amongst entrepreneurs. You'll see that from young entrepreneurs very often. Did the same thing in high school, yard work, stuff like that. I think in one summer we made like $12,000 between junior and senior year just doing side hustle type stuff, which was awesome. Did the same thing in college. And then that one of the college hustles that we did actually spawned into what became a multi-million-dollar company from my college apartment. Like right after my senior year, just kind of erupted. So I just kind of fell into entrepreneurship, into being self-employed, and realized quickly that wow, I didn't go to school for this, and none of it is really applying to starting a business or running a business successfully. Had to learn the hard way through experience. And when you're growing quickly, like we did, going from launch to, at that time, $1.2 million and then on to $7 million before I was 26, 27 years old, you're learning things every single day that you're like, oh my God, why did I not know about this before? So anyways, the genesis point of what I do now, which is to educate people that are interested in entrepreneurship so that they can make that transition more successfully, kind of started in that first build. I was having these amazing conversations. I was talking to people about entrepreneurship, mentors, friends, etc. And I was like, why are we not recording these conversations? They're so profound. Somebody could benefit from it. So we started recording, put it up on Apple. Didn't even know how to do that at the time. Just kind of did some basic preliminary research, read a blog, and just started posting podcasts. And within 2 weeks, the show was trending top 5 in the world in business on New and Noteworthy under business, health, and education. So just ripped. I had no idea what was going to happen. Said, we got something here. I don't know what, but let's push with it. Within a matter of months, we got Damon John, Barbara Corcoran, Grant Cardone, Guy Kawasaki. I mean, literally some of the Jack Canfield. Yesterday, I mentioned Gino Wickman came on my show. people that I read their books and never in my wildest dreams that I think I'd have the opportunity, right? It's been such a blessing to be able to have their one-on-one attention on my show, much like you're doing here. So it just kind of took on a life of its own. And then we ended up launching what is now Startup U, which is my business, Startup University. And it's really to just help people with changing their mindset, right? I always say this, you don't go into brain surgery without the years of tutelage and studies and then just show up at, somebody's house or somebody's, appointment and be like, oh yeah, I'm going to cut you. Okay. So did you go to school? No, but I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night or whatever that saying was, right? When people don't know what they're doing, but anyways, lame joke. So, but you know what I'm saying? You don't skip the steps with everything else. You go to school, you learn. You did the same thing with dietetics. You didn't just become a dietitian. You went through a long process of learning what that looked like. But then for some reason, we decided to start a business. We quit our jobs. We jump into it. We start an Instagram profile. It says entrepreneur on it. We're like, got him. I'm ready. It's just really ass backward thinking. And I'm trying to help those that want to do it the right way, that have been burned and now are trying to do it, or have seen people get burned and they're like, I want to do it. I know I'm an entrepreneur. I feel like I was born to do that. I've always kind of resonated with you and how you view things differently. But I don't know what that looks like. And I can't afford to risk everything. I have kids and they have private school and I have a mortgage and all this stuff. So that's what I do in a very long, I need to work on that, getting that shorter. I apologize.
No, I loved every second of it. It's fine.
But that's what I do. I help people make that transition and do things successfully and go off and create impact in the world, right? I can't create every single business. I have a million ideas, but I can help other people create theirs and we can cause disruption as a conglomerate.
So powerful. I want to circle back to a few things that you mentioned. We're definitely later in a second going to talk about, like, you've interviewed all these people. I'm sure they have some really like solid characteristics in common that I'd like to dive into in a second. Yeah. But before that, I actually do want to circle back to entrepreneurs are born, not bred. Mm-hmm. And I feel like you're right. I agree. What I feel also, though, is that because we live in, I think it's becoming more like where entrepreneurship is a little bit more encouraged. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, we live in a society where like you go to school, you get a job, you die. Sorry. It sounds like really rough, but it's like, that's really like, unless you're, like you said, you're very like open and question things and like really do the work and are introspective, you start to wonder, like, is this really it? And like I said, we're not knocking someone who does choose that path, but I also feel like it's probably hard to identify if you were even born that way, because I feel like society forces us to be the other way. 100%. So what kind of, you kind of mentioned it a little bit, but how does somebody know if like what kind of like what they're doing, there's like a better way to do it if they were kind of to step into being their own boss and building a team and, kind of what comes with being an entrepreneur? I'm
so glad you bring this up, Tony. And I know we're not here to talk about entrepreneurship, but I can't help myself. This is what I can't either.
Right? That's what's so funny. Cause like I'm a nutrition podcast, but I've had many different people from many different backgrounds. And I'm like, okay, we're going to keep it to nutrition and we're going to keep it to lifestyle. We're going to keep it to habits. But then it's like, when you mentioned something like that, something in me was like, we need to elaborate.
You know what though, Tony, I'm going to tell you this, and this is so important for people that are here right now and listening to this. We're on the backs of the metaverse, right? So Facebook announced their launch. They're changing their name and turning it to Meta. That has profound implications. Wait, right? And I'm going to get to your question. I'm going to just, let me touch on this real quick.
I didn't hear this. Wait.
Yeah, because this is like, what the hell is he talking about? We're talking about Meta now. If this goes according to their plan, you're literally creating a parallel universe that is a digital one that mirrors our current world, but there are no limitations. So for example, Tony, you could work with people, not via a two-dimensional screen like what we're doing now. You could actually create your own digital space, like a classroom, where people could come and you could literally sit down with them in a virtual setting, right? A completely synthetic universe, and work with them like you're face-to-face. You can work with somebody in China, you can work with somebody in Russia, you can work with somebody in Ukraine. It doesn't matter, anywhere in the world. You're gonna see an entirely different ecosystem, an entirely different economy that spawns from this. So we live in a world, my point is this, we live in a world where technology has advanced. Think 20 years ago, the technology. Look how far we've come. Mm-hmm. It's amazing how much. Now, there are serious consequences to that, and I've talked about that at large because I think you're going to see, if you think it's bad now, wait until you see people in the metaverse that get trapped in that. People are already addicted to their phones. Imagine now a world they can go into. They're going to spend their whole life in there. So that has serious implications, and we can get into that if you want to or not. My point is this. We are operating, our modus operandi right now is very antiquated. Our education system is antiquated. The way we go about, I'm going to pay $100,000 for an education to go maybe get a job. Hopefully, no guarantee, but this piece of paper is going to give me security.
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now, technology is coming and it's going to replace a lot of jobs. This is Industrial Revolution 2.0 status, but it also spawned the digital world, not just in the metaverse, but just in general, has spawned so many new opportunities that I would argue it's less risky to start a business and spend $5,000 on somebody like with yourself and pay them versus getting yourself $150,000 worth of debt to go do social work. I'm not shitting on social work.
Right.
What I'm saying is that the risk reward scale has shifted substantially. I see people on TikTok doing ASMR or doing clinical psychology or whatever, right? Dog psychology. And they're making a healthy living, probably more than they were in their jobs, subsidizing that income on TikTok, right? Probably didn't have it. I mean, obviously, a lot of those people would require a degree to do that, so that's maybe not a great example. But there are endless opportunities out there in the world right now that you can make money without having to go out and get it and put yourself deliberately in hundreds of thousands of dollars. We just have to adapt our mind to the new world because we have not done so yet, and a lot of our systems and institutions are extremely antiquated and have not caught up with that just yet. Right now, you mentioned something important. I want to get to that. No, I just had to give some context there. If you're not the type that you identify with what I just said, right, against the grain, contrarian, you're like, I just want to make some money. Like I don't need to, be an asshole like you, Chris. I just want to do my own thing, right? The beautiful thing now is that this digital economy has created that opportunity. So there's a sliding scale of entrepreneurship. Mark Zuckerberg and Brian Chesky are not the same as the local mom and pop restaurateur, right? I'm telling you this because I operate in those spaces. I work with local small business owners. I work in the tech space. I work with online business owners. I run an online business. The conversations that they have are literally in a different universe. They would walk into the room and be like, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. Hey, nice to meet you. And then listen to the conversations they're having and be like, wait, maybe I'm not an entrepreneur. What are you guys talking about? Like, I have no idea. So there's a sliding scale. The far end, it's the Cheskys. It's the Zuckerbergs. It's the Elon Musks. It's the crazy guys that want to build and send missiles to Mars. And then on the other side, you have people that just want to make a living and subsidize their income. The beautiful thing is before, you had to be the crazy type because there was so many barriers to entry. There was so much friction that you had to just build something so profound to cut through the noise that it gave you an opportunity to make money, right? Because otherwise you would just be, yelling in an empty hallway. Now with our instruments and our tools that we have in the technology world, you can build a healthy business and you make $60,000 to $100,000 a year just working part-time on the side on the internet. So I want to make sure that's qualified because there's a lot of people that they hear what I say, oh, I'm not an entrepreneur. No, there's opportunities, more robust opportunities. And it's now is the best time in human history to start a business. And I would challenge anybody to find a better time in human history than right now to start a business because the opportunities are rampant.
Yeah, 100%. And like you said, technology is changing, the world is changing. And I think if you got anything from that, whether you decide to explore that or not, I think the thing I was hearing throughout that whole thing is like, we have to challenge the narrative.
Yeah.
You have to stop just going with the flow. So maybe you aren't exposed to it in your, circle around you, but you're listening to this podcast because there is something inside of you that feels like things need to be different.
You've been red pilled now.
So this is like actually exciting. So thank you for sharing. That was super insightful. So I want to go back to, you mentioned like all these different people that you had interviewed. Not for nothing, I feel humbly honored that I was on your podcast next to all of those incredible guests. So the Startup U podcast and Startup U TV, is that on YouTube?
Yeah, it's YouTube.
So you interview all these entrepreneurs and people that do challenge the narrative and have a different mindset. What are there any like of those interviews that really stood out to you, or something that somebody said, or a tip that they gave, or something that really like even maybe made a big impact in your personal life? Or all of those.
It's a really great question, Tony. And I want to say something too, because I really do hate this, and I know you're doing it to be humble, so I'm going to allow you to not be. Some of the most profound and amazing conversations I've had are not with the big notable entrepreneur guests. They're actually with people like you that are doing amazing work in the world. And I hate when I hear one of my guests be like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm on your show. You've had Damon John and Barbara Corcoran. I'm like, yeah, but you're awesome too. So some of those conversations have been, and moreover, actually, to add to that, some of those actually get more downloads because you're more relatable. Right. Damon is Damon. Like, it's not relatable anymore. He's off, $500 million Damon.
Yeah.
And I love Damon, and Damon's great. And I just keep in touch with his PR folks and stuff like that. So like, I have a good relationship with them, but I don't think he's my most downloaded episode. I don't. Sorry, Damon. I don't think you are. Just because it's like, well, here's this guy on TV. Like, what do I have in common with him? But people that are in the struggle and growing their business or just getting started, that's way more relatable. It's way more utility to their lives. But to get to your question, because I wanted to give you that aside and let you know, like, hey, you're great too, right?
Oh, thank you.
And I really did enjoy our conversation. So people, please go listen to that because Tony was fantastic. I think the big thing you see, Tony, that is such a misconception is the time and effort and persistency and tenacity that people put into getting their business off the ground and to be where they are. We see the tip of the iceberg, if that, to what really went in. I've heard of people that couldn't afford both a rent and an office, but they needed an office. And so they just kept a sleeping bag in the closet of their office or the corner, and they slept in their office and they showered at the gym. Damon himself shut FUBU down 4 times because I was at a season where they couldn't afford to keep it open. His mom had to borrow, I think she took out a second mortgage on her home to allow Damon to be able to build FUBU out of the garage. Grant Cardone was an alcoholic and was on the verge at like 25 of losing his life. So these people that we see now, we just think that they have always been who they are, and that's not the case at all. This is a lifestyle. It's not a career. And they have committed to that journey. They have committed to that process. And I always tell people this: if you think that you're going to be fine and dandy and buying a private island in 5 years, that's very rare. We see the notable ones like the Zucks and stuff like that have done that, but they're like not just unicorns. They're like a multi-headed unicorn. It just doesn't happen that often. And in some cases, it was just more perfect alignment with the market and a lot of luck to get to that fast. Not that they wouldn't have succeeded anyways. But most people have to really invest. I think the average success age of an entrepreneur is 43 years old.
Wow.
43. So I'm not here to discourage people. I don't want people to get this twisted. It doesn't mean you're not going to experience any success at all until you're 43. It doesn't mean you're going to be literally living under a bridge until you're 43. What it means is that you're not going to arrive at like your peak potential where people are like you're noteworthy and notable and all these various things until you're 43. I'm not at that place. You mentioned our YouTube. I have less than 2,000 subscribers on YouTube, and I've been busting my ass for 2 years on that. I wish I'd started sooner, right? Wish I had, but I didn't. So that's where I'm at. So I've done all these cool things and all these amazing people, and even I'm still hustling in certain areas of my business, right? So you will have success. You can subsidize your income quickly within a matter of probably a year to 2 years. You can subsidize your income if you build on the side or you're doing side hustles to build your business full time or whatever that looks like. That's the first goal, right? Subsidize your income. Then it's the other stuff. Then it's like, okay, how do I like start creating generational wealth? And that's the long process that I'm talking about. So that's the biggest thing I've taken away ad nauseum probably from my guests is just the journey that's required. And then secondly, and kind of ties into what we want to talk about today, and I need to get back on track because I'm just way out of line.
No, this is so good. Keep going. Yeah, okay. No, keep going.
It's an approach. It's not just to business. I think we get it so twisted. It's an approach to life. Because if you can learn the winning formula for life, the beneficiary is the externals, right? It's everything else that surrounds your life. Like, who are you and how are you investing in yourself? You, the asset. And that's how you need to view yourself, right? Yeah. We just kind of view ourselves as like, we're just doing. But if we hired an employee, we would invest in that person so that they would be better, so they would do their job better. Why don't we do that with ourselves, right? We'll balk at a $2,000 investment in ourselves to create generational wealth in our business. But yet we'll go hire somebody and pay them $30,000 a year because we need help, right? So it's like, wait, what? Like, again, it goes back to challenging that narrative of like, why would you spend $100,000 on student loans if you know that's not what you want to do and you could spend $5,000 on yourself and create a business and work for yourself? Like, we need to challenge these thoughts, right? These narratives, because they're not concrete other than the fact that they're societally acceptable and they're just we've normalized them, right? So these people, the way they operate is they're constantly looking inward to better themselves in some way. They take responsibility for things they're doing well. They take responsibility for things they're not doing well. When things don't go well in the business, they look inward, not outward. It's called looking in the mirror, not looking out the window. They constantly do that. And the core, I think, of that is Habits is what habits are they building that create fruit in everything that they do, business and or otherwise included.
Yeah, I thank you so much for hitting on that, because it's so true. Like, I've noticed, and I'll be fully transparent, I'm in a season right now where things are tough because I'm scaling now. I've never scaled before. Scaling, it basically means now I have employees. I've never had employees before. Like, things are new. It literally feels like a brand new business because it's all new to me, and it's uncomfortable. And there's been hard moments, and I really had to push through them. And exactly what you just said is exactly where I needed to look at myself. I was slipping up from habits because I was so scattered. And so I needed to go back to my foundational habits. I needed to go back to like doing the inner work and being like going deeper with it, not just kind of going through the motions, but really like asking myself those hard questions. And the more that I did that, like, it's so crazy how your mind shifts to more positive, your outlook is more positive, your attitude, your energy, everything starts from when you look inward. And that can be applied to anyone. And I talk about that in my book, Once Upon a Diet. Like, it's all about being more introspective and figuring out like what works best for you, and, you know, being honest with yourself rather than just going through the motions. So, you know, it can be applied in anything from your diet to your fitness habits, to your lifestyle habits, to your job, your career, anything. It really comes down to like, you know, what am I not doing that I need to be doing to show up as a better version of me?
Yeah. And I always tell people this: what you do, whether you have a job or a business, that's a tool. That's a vehicle. Right. It's a vehicle to create income for yourself. And then what you do with that income is totally up to you, whether you invest that to create generational wealth or whatever. So all a business does is vastly increase the ceiling at which you can generate income for yourself. Now, obviously that is super simplistic view of it. Obviously you're talking about impacting other people, creating value in the world, doing those things. And I'm not dismissing that, but for you as an individual, right? If you're looking at it purely from like a monetary standpoint, that's really all it is. Here's the problem with that though, that people don't view it through this lens. When you have a job, the wheels that churn are a lot slower, because not everything is reliant on you to grow. You're a cog in the wheel to a large degree, unless you work for a really small company and you're one of the first few employees. What that means is you have more time to grow and evolve and to invest in yourself and to learn about what you can do better at your job so you can get that next promotion. The only difference in entrepreneurship is that wheel turns so much faster, because it's like Tony now has employees. Holy shit, Tony has to learn how to manage employees. Holy shit, Tony has to learn how to keep growing so she can afford her employees. Holy shit, Tony has to, right? So
it's a lot more pressure.
That wheel just churns like 50 times faster, meaning Tony has to evolve and grow at a rate that is conducive to the rate at which those wheels are churning. Now, you can slow those wheels down. You can slow down the growth of your business to be like, whoa. And in fact, one of the biggest lessons I learned from my first business is to slow the freak down, because I wasn't ready for that wheel turning so fast. Entrepreneurship will put you under a microscope, brings out the best in you, brings out the worst in you. You're going to find out regardless. When you find out some things, okay, let's go back. Let's kind of stay where we are right now, right? Not forever. We're not trying to plateau and be small, but let's take a step back and be like, what do I need? What got me here won't get me there. And that's with anything in life, not just with a business. What do I need? And this is where I see this with more mature versus younger entrepreneurs and people in general. They're able to assess and analyze what they need to take the next steps. I call it the Stair-Step Method, right? So you take a step up on the step and you're like, okay, great, we made it. Now what do I need for the next step, right? Is it the same thing? Is it something else? What do I need to learn? Who do I need to learn from? What resources do I need to put around myself? That's what mature entrepreneurs do. That's what mature people do, is what do I need to take the next steps in my life? What do I put around myself? What do I equip myself with? What do I need to learn, right? And the faster you do that process, which includes your habits, right? If that's part of your habits is doing what I just mentioned, you're going to take those steps much faster than other people. We can't synthesize, maybe in the metaverse we will be able to, but we can't synthesize more time. Everybody has the same amount of time. You've heard this a million times. I'm not telling you anything profound. You're like, oh my God, I never thought about that. Everybody's thought about that. But it's true, and we don't operate with that. We're still playing the like, how do I just like bust my ass and work 18? So people are like, oh, how do I work 20 hours a day? Well, that's not sustainable. How do you work more efficiently? How do you go through that process, that churning process, faster than what other people are doing? That's your opportunity. That's your big opportunity. Whether you're looking for the next promotion in your work, whether you're looking for your business growth, whatever it looks like. How do I grow faster than everybody else and equip myself, not just with useless knowledge? I'm not telling you to go be a trivia champion. I'm telling you, learn what you need to learn for the season that you're in with whatever it is you're doing that has the highest degree of impact so that you can achieve said goal, whatever that goal is, and that requires you to establish what a goal is, to have the velocity to get to that goal faster than what other people would do. If you do that, you'll be a rising star in anything you do, both personally and professionally.
Yeah. Oh my God. I couldn't agree more. I really couldn't agree more. Let's jump into the specific habits, or maybe before we get into the habits that successful people have, let's talk about maybe the habits that we need to break. Maybe the things that, sorry, not sorry, but we might hurt your feelings right now. Where if you're not getting to where you want to be going quickly or efficiently, right? It's all about working smarter, not harder. What are some habits people might be engaging in where they're not seeing the trajectory that they want to be seeing?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing you can do, and there's a variety of ways you can go about doing it, and I'll tell you all of mine, is introspective work. If you can make a habit of being aware, because here's the problem, Tony, a lot of these things are not conscious. They're not. It's not that people are actively making a decision to not pursue the things they know are going to help them grow and achieve their goals. They're not aware of the ways they're even sabotaging themselves or preventing themselves from arriving there. Because we live in such a robotic, mechanical society. We wake up, we do the same things every single day. We eat the same food, we go to the same job, we have the same hobbies, we have the same friends. It's all the same. And so you get into a very much a robotic mindset in terms of I'm going through the mechanics of doing what I do. There's no pattern disruption to create awareness of what you are or not doing that's actually having an impact in what you're trying to accomplish, or even aware of what you're trying to accomplish to begin with. So the first thing I think is to get outside of your box, right? We live in boxes. We live in a box in our home, and we get in a box to go to our work, and then we work inside of a box, and then we get inside that box, we work at a cubicle, which is another box. So we live our lives in these little boxes, just box to box to box. That doesn't expand your mind outside of thinking literally outside of the box, like both metaphorically and realistically, right? Literally. So I think that's the first thing is what's going on? What do I want to do? And I don't know that until I spend some time with myself. And I know it sounds really woo-woo, and I'm not a woo-woo person at all, but it could involve just journaling, right? Where am I at? How do I feel? Mindfulness and meditation are totally different, by the way. People don't know that. Mindfulness is more of just recognizing, okay, how do I feel? Like, what is going on? Right? It doesn't require you to sit there and like listen to, some Buddhist monk with some incense, blazing in the background. That's not what it involved. It's just literally being aware, increasing your awareness of yourself and what's going on with you. Now, I mentioned there are various degrees of this. I'm a big fan of NLP work, neuro-linguistic programming, because someone else can help you kind of delve into and dive into those things that maybe you aren't aware that are subconscious and need to become conscious. I'm also not advocating against, I'm not telling you to do this. This is not health or medical advice whatsoever. But I've been microdosing lately, microdosing with D8 specifically, with Delta 8, which is legal where I'm at currently. So don't get on me. I'm doing legal stuff. But I've been doing that because it seems to stimulate my HPA axis and kind of expand my neurons to be able to pull up things that are unconscious and make them conscious. Now, for those who don't know what that is, Delta 8 is aged THC. I'm just going to be blatantly clear about that. I do it on the weekends. Have been doing on the weekends for about a month and a half. And I've had some of the most profound breakthroughs in my life because I'm delving into an area of my brain in the unconscious that I don't normally do with my rationally thinking brain. Right. So that's extremely, again, I'm not suggesting you do that. That is not my advice, but finding ways to dig deeper into your mind to find things that maybe you don't even know are there. And that could be done through a variety of different modalities, including all of which I just mentioned. That's the first thing. Next, what we want to do is we want to establish, okay, what is the main habit? What is the main habit right now that's holding me back? In the book, The Power Habit, he calls it the keystone habit. What are the keystone habits? This is the big mistake people make. And I know you outlined this, so we'll go and jump into it. I know you want to talk about the mistakes people make. The mistake people make is they try to address all of them at once. They identify 75 habits that are bad habits. And they're like, all right, let's get it. And it's like, dude, if you went to the gym and you tried to lift everything in the gym, full capacity, maxing out, drop sets, you would never go back to the gym again. You'd burn yourself out. Same with the diet. As you know, Tony, people try to revamp their entire diet overnight. They go from eating pizza and hamburgers and hot dogs to eating nothing but, hamster food, just gerbil food, right? It's just like, it's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. So we have to find the main ones. What's the main thing? Are you a smoker? Are you a drinker? Or is it something not so serious? Is it something a little bit less than that? Or maybe it's you stay up too late. So you always feel sluggish the next
day. On social media.
Scrolling on social media, being on your phone too much. What do you identify as the main thing that is causing you to live a life that you don't want to live? And then what I suggest people do, because this is brain science. This is actually in the book, The Power of Habit, is you have to first, there's 3 elements of it. It's the item, It's the desired outcome of the item, and then figuring out what you're going to do to potentially replace and or subsidize that with something else, right? So for example, in the book, he talks about how this guy wanted to stop eating cookies, and he works in this office and whatever. And every day at lunch or during his breaks, he would eat cookies, and he was gaining weight and he didn't like how he felt and stuff like that. But what he found was it wasn't about the cookie. It was that during the breaks, he ate his cookie while gathering with other people. It was about the congregation of people and having something to do to kind of be like, oh, well, I'm eating, so I'm having conversation with my friends. He replaced that with eating, whatever, like trail mix or something like more healthy. And he found that it was just the same reward, right, in his brain, his dopamine center, to be able to have some kind of snack because it was about the congregation of people, not about the cookie, right?
Love that.
Or you swap the cookie, which he did, but you can do this too, is maybe I like strawberries a lot, or maybe I like blueberries a lot, or maybe I like, right? So find a healthy alternative, but make it just that one thing. So what are the healthy alternatives? And I'm a huge phone addict. And my phone's right here. And sometimes I just want to chuck it at the wall. I get so frustrated with myself.
Yeah.
So what I've done is I have been like, okay, how do I view it like a smoke break? How do I treat it like that? I know it's crazy, but how do I treat it like that? So I leave it outside of the office where I'm at right now. And when I take my scheduled breaks throughout the day, I give myself permission to get on my phone. Right.
I love that.
So that way I'm not constantly being a checkaholic that I can, because I can be a huge checkaholic.
Yeah. So it's so easy to get into, to get to. Yeah.
And they've built, by the way, they've spent billions and probably millions and billions of dollars to fight for your attention, because they don't make money unless you're on their platform. With Facebook, if you're not on their platform scrolling and they're not showing you ads, guess what? Facebook doesn't make money. So they have hired people, neuroscientists, behavioral scientists, to be able to literally make you addicted. Just the same as people that make cigarettes have put stuff in there to make you addicted. It's the same exact thing. So we have to identify the things that are hurting us, and then we have to figure out the ones that have a ripple effect across all of the others. So exercise is a great example. They found that exercise is one of the biggest keystone habits, because what it does is it has a ripple effect on everything else, a domino effect on everything else. People, when they're exercising, are like, well, shit, I'm not going to eat a burger. I just busted my ass at the gym. I'm not going to smoke anymore. I'm going to feel terrible. I'm going to go to bed early because I'm tired because I worked out. People's credit scores even went up by 150 points just by having active and consistent a workout program. So we have to find the things that don't just alleviate one thing. And I think some people don't take enough time to sit on what's the thing that helps the other things. So for example, they'll say, I need to go to bed earlier versus what's the thing that causes me to want to go to bed earlier, right? So they think too low on that hierarchy of what's going to make the biggest impact, not high enough. The exercise thing will literally destroy the others. So if we can pick like 4 or 5 really bad habits, focus on one at a time. They found that it takes 66 days on average, up to 217, I believe. Don't quote me specifically, but 66 is the average amount of time they found to change a habit, because you literally have to carve an entire different neural pathway every time you're trying to do something, because the brain is going to default to what it's been doing. It takes 66 days to be able to change it to do something else. So we don't go into this with 75 habits. We're trying to change them on 66 days. We need to identify maybe the top 4 or 5 and then say, okay, this one quarter, right? This 1 month, this 1 3-month cycle, I'm going to stop being addicted to my phone. The next quarter, I'm going to go to bed earlier. The next quarter, I'm going to, substitute one item of food that I'm eating too much of because it's really bad for me. And I'm going to substitute that with one healthy item. I don't want to step on your toes, Tony. Maybe that's not what you do.
For anybody who's new to the podcast, I do believe in like swaps, but to an extent, we can even people can get a little obsessive with that. We don't want to go back to the extremes, but no, these are great. These are really great tips. I love it. I think what my takeaway is from listening is the lowest hanging fruit I always teach, which is like the thing that you feel like you can really do. So like, I agree. Even though there might be something, which is the other part that I heard, which is like, what's the thing that's truly going to move the needle? You have to go, but I feel like pick from both of those things. Like, don't just do something just to do something that's really not going to affect a lot. So make sure you're picking something that really is going to move the needle. At the same time, if you're like so attached to, I don't know, the creamer in your coffee, for example. Like, I'm sure there's other things in other areas that you're just like, I'm not quite ready to let go of. Like, sometimes too, it's building, picking things that are going to move the needle, but also that are a little bit, you feel not so attached to, and then you build the momentum and you realize actually that wasn't so bad. Like, and you start to feel better. And when you feel better, you do better. And even that becomes a habit of like, just like picking the next thing and then the next thing and the next thing. And it seems like a long time, like 3 months or so, but because I said it's definitely more than 66 days. Like, I agree with you. Like, that's like the average, but it can go more than that, especially depending on the goal. But it really, like, if you really are focused, it's going to happen faster. And you're better off going. And I talk about this a lot, like the slow way, I'm using air quotes, which is going which seems like the longer route, but then you're actually doing something rather than trying to get it done really quickly. And then you actually never make progress. That's actually the slow way, you know? So I think that these are such great tips.
I'm glad you say that, because it's so important what you just said. And this is why it's so difficult to kind of cram, like, okay, let's talk about habits in 5 minutes. Let's get it all right. It's so tough in like a limited format to be able to do that. But what you said is so important. And for me, that's the phone. It's the phone. I have not been able to kick that. And I think, and this is why it's important to analyze it psychologically. So let me use myself as a case study to kind of highlight what you're talking about here, because I think this is really important. For me, what I identified was I am more of an extroverted person, if you haven't gathered. So people, I think what I was reading, and I have to verify the science on this, but this is what I was reading about, that people that are more extroverted, they get dopamine reward from being with friends, right? They leave and they're like on a high when they go to social settings or parties. They're like, oh my God, like it's like they literally are like did a drug, you know?
Yeah.
And so
whereas I'm the opposite. I'm like I love it for a moment, and then I'm burnt out. I need time to just like recharge.
You're like my wife. So you guys get like energy from just being with yourself and being in silence, and like, oh man, this and this and this. And for me, I'm around people like right now, and I'm like on crack. You know, like I just go crazy. I have to actually taper myself down, because I'll get in these podcast conversations and it's like, dude, calm down. I'm sure your listeners are thinking that. And I'm drinking coffee while I'm doing it. So it's not good.
Amazing.
It's a nasty combo. But what I found though, and this is why the psychological aspect to approaching this is so important, as I found it to be, is knowing that about myself, knowing the science around me being in communion with others and how it creates that dopamine reward system. Guess what I'm synthesizing with this stupid phone? The same thing. So guess what? Now I can go to the party anytime I want to. It's called social media, baby. I can go see what's going on and talk to people, engage and blah, 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 blah. So it's like my brain wants that dopamine because it likes that. That's what gives me energy. It's what makes me thrive, right? Is being around other people. So I'm resorting to the phone because I don't like to be alone. I get bored. I want to do things. I want to talk to people. I want to be around people. So understanding that about myself allows me to then approach it from a different vantage point, right? And being like, well, this is a hard one for me right now. And I'm not in a situation where I can just not do those things. So I'll address something else because that's more feasible for me, like diet and exercise and all the things that I've done to revamp from my health crisis, right? Those are things that I did that were more easy for me. Like you said, more attainable, low-hanging fruit. This is the last one in my life right now that's a huge vice that I'm like, I'm sure it's not the last, but the last one I'm consciously aware of. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, this is really hurting me and I need to do something about it. So I totally agree with you. And also too, and this is really important for people to understand, I think people think that motivation leads to momentum, that they're like, well, I'm not motivated right now. I don't feel motivated, about changing my diet. I don't feel motivated about going to the gym. I don't feel motivated about not being on my phone. No. It's an inverse relationship.
100%.
It's quite the opposite. Momentum leads to motivation. When you see results from you doing things that have profound impact in your life, you get motivated by that, which in turn feeds back into the momentum. So change the relationship and that dynamic of how those two play together. And what you'll find is, holy crap, I love getting momentum in areas because it like literally makes me so fired up. I want to do more of it. So that alone, if you can make that one habit switch alone, I promise you, is going to change your life. That one thing, if that's all you take away from this conversation.
Yeah, let's go on that, because this is probably going to come out like right before like New Year's, like right before where people are thinking of their New Year's resolutions, or maybe before. I have to look. I might put it out before because I want people to stop waiting to start. Like I'm going to actually completely do a separate. I always say like around New Year's, it's like, it's a beautiful thing that it gives you a chance to be introspective. Like what we talk should be a habit regularly. Right. Yeah. So it can be great, but you have to go about it with the right mindset. And other than that, it unfortunately, it becomes this excuse. It just becomes this waiting game and this vicious cycle. And so I would love for you to take a moment to speak to the people who are waiting to feel motivated, who are waiting for, the start of a new month, the start of a new year, when their kids graduate from college or, go to college. So like they're empty nesting, that's when they'll focus on the business or whatever it is. I would love you to speak to that for a little bit as we kind of start to wrap up today.
Yeah. So first of all, if you're setting a time frame of which you're going to do something, you're approaching it with that motivated mindset. I'm going to be motivated because this thing is happening at this day, and that's going to get me motivated. So you're already approaching it with the wrong frame of reference. And I totally agree with what you said, Tony. There's no better time. The best time to start was 10 years ago. The second best time is right now, right? Not for New Year's, right? And the reason those people flame out, actually 83% of people on those New Year's resolutions give up by February. So they don't even make it a month.
It's not even a month. And they don't even really start in January. They like wait for like the week after.
I know,
like
crazy.
they don't, it's like 3 weeks, like anything else when somebody does the like a fad diet or a workout program or whatever that's like from that similar mindset, they're done after 3 weeks.
Yeah. So it goes back there. Okay. There's a couple of things that we're going to reference back to things I talked about already because it ties into this very appropriately. So the first is the introspective work. I know you're probably like, I don't want to do that. That sounds lame. That sounds like I'm going to be a monk. But what you'll realize is this. These things are the reasons why this isn't working for me. I'll give you a perfect example. I'm not a morning person. I'm struggling right now. It's almost 11 o'clock in the morning, and I'm still kind of tongue twisted and stumbling over my words. I'm just not a morning person. I never have been. I'm a night owl. So I found an assessment called the Chronotype Test by Dr. Michael Bruce. He's called the sleep doctor. And I tested out as the wolf chronotype, which is what I've always known. Being a night owl, being up late, not necessarily being at my best in the morning. So what I did was, and this is a huge issue, we play against ourselves, not with ourselves. We don't build a system that works for us. We try to fit ourselves in somebody else's box. Because I saw that Jocko Willink, the former Navy SEAL, he gets up and works out at 4:30. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to be up at 4:30 and I'm going to be like Jocko, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, great. That'll last for 3 days. And I know people that have tried to do it and it'll last for 3 days. Now, if you are the lion chronotype, that may work for you because that's who you are, right? So it starts with understanding who you are, what has worked and what has not worked for you in all areas, not just sleep, not night owl. It extends to everything. What works for me, what doesn't work for me. Understand that first. And then what we do is we are intentional about creating a structure that we set ourselves up to succeed. If you're a football coach and your quarterback can't make a certain throw and he's not good at that, what are you going to do? You're going to make your entire playbook around throws that he can make, around the ways that he does succeed, around ways that he does excel. If he's better at a shotgun than he is under center, you're going to put him under shotgun as much as possible because you want your quarterback to win. You're the quarterback, right? Put yourself in position where you are going to be at your best and give yourself permission to do so. If we did that one thing alone, rather than trying to be cookie cutter like everybody else or being like somebody we saw on the internet, and influencer life has made this 10 times worse, right? Because now everybody's trying to be like everybody else. I want to be like Gary Vee. I want to be like blah. I want to be like this. No, be the best you. Because guess what? Here's the deal. If you try to be like Gary Vee, you're already second best. You'll never be as good as Gary Vee because you're not Gary Vee.
100%.
You can be the best you. And then guess what? You're going to have people be like, oh shit, I want to be the next Tony because Tony's amazing. You're going to be like, no, please be the best you. Don't try to be the best me. Right. But we don't conceptualize and really internalize that to be able to manifest what we want in our lives. So if we can do that, understand who we are, understand what works and what doesn't work, then we can build a system. And then inside of that system, we can build in the habits that we're trying to create and the habits we're trying to break and the habits we're trying to change or adapt or add or whatever the case may be. So I think that's the best way to go about doing it is to literally find out what works for you, what doesn't work for you. Did I answer your question entirely though? I think there was something else you wanted to add.
Yeah, no, I think this is perfect. Just basically for the person who's waiting to get started, like kind of what would you say to them?
Yeah, right. I would find out what works for you and go with it. Even if it's unorthodox, even if it's something that you feel like is really weird or is not something other people have done. If you want to work until 9 or 10 o'clock, that's what I do. I work till 9 o'clock at night because that's when I work at my best. But when I realized that I was cutting off at 5 because that's what everybody else does. So get up at 6, start by 8, work by 9, finish by 5, be healthy, be balanced. No, I was cutting out 4 of my best hours of my workday, which is 5 to 9, where I do most of my creative work. And a lot of my inspiration comes from in those 4 hours. I work till 9. I sleep till 8:30, 9 o'clock. And I'm not ashamed to say that because that's what worked for me. You may have
that's amazing. No, yeah. And that's amazing because and I literally am the opposite. Like after 5 o'clock at night, I'm non-human.
Yeah.
Like I make myself like very similar to what you were saying about before, like people I think I'm extroverted because I show up in that way just because I've kind of had to and just like, and I can be that way, but I like have a tank of energy tank that like I need to recharge, and my best creative ideas and thoughts and writing and all of the things that I love to do are in the morning, like early in the morning, but when everyone else is sleeping. But then, and then of course I'm like done by the end of the night, but that's so you have to know that. And also too, I think going back to kind of knowing who you are, I think we have to also be mindful that, very similar to kind of wrapping it up, like what we talked about at the beginning, is that society might make you think you are a certain way, but you have to challenge that narrative. So maybe you think you think like, no, I'm really not a morning person, but maybe because your habits are wacky, maybe that's why you're not a morning person. Maybe that's not really how you're design. Just maybe you're obviously you're not a morning person if you stay up till midnight, or past midnight, and like you're kind of eating late and like not exercising, and you can't fall asleep because you know what I mean? So it's like, are we implementing the things to take care of our bodies and let our bodies, and maybe a test or something that we could take to help us really truly understand like where we are and who we are. I'm going
to break that narrative real quick. And I know we're trying to wrap up, so I'm going to be really quick about this, but this is so important. Dave Ramsey talks about this often, and I think it really changes it's a paradigm change completely. 8 out of 10 people in the United States, 8 out of 10 Americans are living paycheck to paycheck and only have $1,000 to fall back on in savings. 8 out of 10, so 80%. 81% of people currently, and this was as of, I believe, last year, and I have to look up the actual specific source, but I was just reading about it because I used it in one of my sales pages, so I know it's legit. But I believe it was like NPR or something like that. Anyways. 81% of people are currently unhappy with their career and or job. So again, 8 out of 10 people, right? So here's the deal. When we think that we are conforming because that's what works and that's what's, other people are doing to be successful, 8 out of your 10 neighbors that live around you do not have more than $1,000 to their name to fall back on, and they're miserable in their jobs. Why the freak would you want to be like them? And I'm not picking on anybody that's in that situation. I'm not. This is your opportunity and your wake-up call to do effing something about it, to be different. So being like everybody else means you're broke and you only have $1,000 and you hate your freaking job. That's what being like everybody else means. So why are we not being different? Why are we not finding what works for us? Why are we not finding what makes us happy? So give yourself permission. If you already feel like you're different, embrace it. Be different. One of the biggest things I didn't do for myself was accept myself as being different. I tried to be like everybody else. I was miserable. I was depressed. I was suicidal. It was terrible. When I embraced who I was and just went with it and allowed myself to be different, everything changed. So whether you are that way, embrace it. Whether you're not that way, here's your wake-up call. Time to take the red pill.
Love this. This has been so helpful. Chris, thank you so much for being here. How can people connect with you, reach out, work with you, listen to your podcast? Kind of give us all the details of how we can.
Yeah. So Hey CMH is everywhere. So if you want to find me, I'm at Hey CMH, Hey, like hello, CMH, like my name, Chris Michael Harris, on social media at Hey CMH. My website's heycmh.com. If you are interested in exploring entrepreneurship, or even if you are one, there are 2 different assessments you can take. One tells you what type of entrepreneur you are and what type of business you should build. And the other one tells you what path you should take to actually transitioning from job into business. So depending on where you are, you can actually take both of them if you want to. And that'll really help you out if you're like, yeah, I might actually be one to kind of do my own thing. So that'd be awesome. And then the last piece of advice I have for you is, guys, you don't realize the work that goes on behind the scenes and all the stuff that Tony has to do before to prepare for this interview and then conduct the interview and take out time out of her day to provide this to you for free. So I have a quick ask of you. It takes 25 seconds, 27 seconds at most. If it doesn't, you can scream at me on the internet. I give you permission to do so. Subscribe to her show and leave a review. Those are the 2 most important things. Wherever you get your podcast from, whatever app you're on, those are the 2 most important things that the podcast apps look for when they promote other people's shows, when they put you on the charts, when they allow your show to rank. And I know because my show has ranked before, like I mentioned. Those 2 things, above all else, more than downloads, more than listen time, more than anything, those 2 things make the biggest difference. So it's like leaving a tip for your waiter or your waitress. She gave you value. She's providing it to you for free. The least you can do is leave her a tip for doing so. Subscribe and leave a quick review. You don't have to say anything. You just be like, great chat. That's all you have to say. 5-star, great chat. That's all you have to do. It takes 25 seconds.
Thank you, Chris. That's so nice of you. I appreciate that. I really, really do. And guys, make sure you give Chris a follow. Go take those assessments. I'm definitely going to go do that. I think that would be so cool to just see if I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, just for validation.
I'm confident you are. I'm confident you're going to test. I think you're going to test as the expert. I think you're an expert, which is the business type that I recommend. And it's going to really tell you to create a business like what you've already created. So I think I think things are going to work out. I'm not going to create an existential crisis. I think you're going to be okay.
Good. Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, guys. Yeah. So you heard Chris. Definitely also, before you subscribe, and definitely subscribe if you're not subscribed yet, and write a review. Also, take a screenshot of this episode. Tag me on Instagram at tips_with_Tony with an I, and tag Chris at HeyCMH. Correct?
Yeah, hey like hello, not hey like horses. Some people think I'm saying hey like hey. I'm like, no. Hey like hello. Hey, CMH.
Yeah, got it. Tag us. Let us know your biggest takeaway, what resonated with you. And if this truly resonates, send it to a friend, share it. Whatever you can do to get this message out there. I think it's so powerful and so important wherever stage you're at in your journey. So thank you again for listening. Chris, thanks again for being here. As always, I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.